Welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Okay. I thought we'd do this slightly differently. I can just get into a truth and reconciliation discussion with you, which I'm sure you've had many times. But I wanted to make this slightly more personal because you were there when it all happened. Did you ever think that Article 370 was going to be abrogated in this way?
No. Not until the very end of July, beginning of August. There were a lot of rumors floating around. But when credible or seemingly credible constitutional authorities sitting in Jammu and Kashmir reassure you time and again that you have nothing to worry about and that there is no threat to Jammu and Kashmir's constitutional status and that there is no move to tinker with any of the rules or laws concerning Jammu and Kashmir, then you sort of take that at face value, which is the mistake that we made. The then governor of Jammu and Kashmir, who these days is in the news for very different reasons, when we met him in the run-up to 5th August, and we point-blank asked him what's happening, he said, you guys are just rumor-mongering. Aap logon ko dara rahe ho. And that there is nothing to worry about. And I assure you, as in he assures us, that there is no move to do anything to Jammu and Kashmir. Now, of course, he claims he had no idea. But I would take that with as much of a pinch of salt as I should have taken his earlier assurances.
When it happened, you were detained. Tell us about how that happened.
Well, actually, it started the night before.
Okay.
There were, if you remember, suddenly out of the blue, they discovered a rusty old sniper rifle.
Yes.
And something they claimed to have been an explosive device, the government claimed, and said that there was some threat to the Amarnath Yatra, and they curtailed that. And then there was this sudden move to ask tourists to vacate Jammu and Kashmir. That's when we realized that something big was happening. That night, the telephones started to go off. And in Jammu and Kashmir, when telephones start going off, you know trouble has either sort of already broken out or it is not far behind. But in the past, whenever mobile phones have been shut down, fixed line BSNL phones, they have traditionally functioned. So like idiots, we were busy calling each other up and exchanging BSNL numbers and telling people, like, ye mera BSNL number hai, aap mujhe phone karna. And as if sort of the BSNL would continue to function. And we went to bed with sort of internet going down. Woke up in the morning and there was nothing. No mobile internet, no fixed line internet, and no BSNL phones. I then was told by one of the people working in my home that I was effectively under house arrest. And when I went out of the house and looked at the gates, there were these massive padlocks that had been placed on the gates of the house. And I asked my security people, I said, what is this? They said, ye aapko band kiya hai. So I said, under whose orders? They said, government. I said, what paper? I mean, show me the paperwork. They said, wo nahi hai, bas tala laga, aap baithiye. And I sat until the evening when my illegal confinement was converted into ostensibly a legal one. They used a provision for preventive detention and shifted me to a government guest house where I spent the next 8 months.
If they say preventive detention, that is supposed to be required, they're required to show that you would commit an act of violence, you would do something. What grounds did they show for your preventive detention?
That I was a threat to peace. This wasn't, I mean, they subsequently, after the expiry of 6 months of this preventive detention, they then detained me under a different law, which is called the Public Safety Act. And that made a complete mockery of it, because when they detained me under the Public Safety Act, they actually detained me for doing what nationalistic India wanted me to do. The grounds for detaining me were that I campaigned against the separatists and that I defeated Pakistan's designs by encouraging voters to come out and vote in elections And because I was capable of defeating Pakistan's designs, I should therefore be detained under the Public Safety Act.
I'm sorry,
So,
that makes no sense.
Well,
just tell me again. They detained you under the Public Safety Act for
Because I
foiling
made-
Pakistan's designs
Yes.
and opposing separatists.
Yes,
How can you even write that? How does that even make
well,
sense?
it's in the written order. It's part of the Supreme Court's record now. I was detained by my own country for making elections in India a success. Now, you go figure how that works. That is this government's very strange sort of outlook towards Jammu and Kashmir and mainstream politicians. You can be detained under the Public Safety Act because you actively campaign against Pakistan's boycott.
When you were in detention, were you allowed access to newspapers, internet, anything?
Not for the first 5 weeks.
5 weeks.
Yeah.
And did anyone come and see you from the government? Did they tell you what was happening?
It took 3 weeks for my sister to come and see me. I had occasional visits from members of the staff. I mean, lots of things happened at that time. If I'm not mistaken, I think Sushma Swaraj passed away while I was in detention, and I had no idea for days on end that something like this had happened. So there were all sorts of things that were happening that we had no idea about. I knew that about 40-odd colleagues of mine were in another government guest house, and I was trying to find out about how they were doing, but there was very little back and forth. I do distinctly remember, because in the room that I was placed in, there was a television, and there were wires for the Tata Sky box, but there was no box. The box had been taken away. Mysteriously, the box reappeared on the 15th of August, because I think they felt that I should sit and watch the Prime Minister's address from the ramparts of the Red Fort. And I was so desperate to watch something that I probably would have sat and watched that as well. Except that they forgot that you need to recharge a Tata Sky box once in a while so you can watch the channels. And so I switched on the TV, and with great expectation and hope, I switched on the box, hoping that Doordarshan would come on and I would be treated to the address to the nation. Sadly, it didn't work, and the box disappeared, and it didn't come back, I think, for a few months after that.
So, Omar, what would you do all day? You are like cut off, you know things are happening outside, you have no idea, nobody tells you anything. What was that experience like?
See, unlike my dad, I'm very comfortable in my own company. My father is a very sort of social person.
Gregarious,
I think in similar circumstances, my father would have flipped his lid. Having spent 8 years in boarding school, I was actually sort of, I mean, it probably sounds strange, but I didn't really struggle.
Really?
I honestly didn't. I know people, I mean, connected with me, people close to me, they struggled more on my account than I did. I had a very fixed routine, and I went back almost to boarding school sort of levels. I had a fixed time to wake up, fixed time for my meals.
It's not, I have to tell you, it's not a great advertisement for Sanar to say that being in detention is like...
Let me put it this way. I mean, if Sanar can train you for 8 months of detention, it can train you for pretty much anything. But yeah, I had a fixed routine for my meals. I had a fixed routine for my walk in the compound, to the extent that I regulated it to the point that even how many rounds I would do clockwise or anti-clockwise of the grounds, even that was measured. So it was always 5 rounds clockwise, 5 rounds anti-clockwise. I had 5 stones that I would move from one side of the staircase to the other. So I knew that I was doing exactly 5 rounds, not 1 round more, not 1 round less. Every day I had to be measured for my blood pressure and sort of my mental health, because they wanted to ensure that I wouldn't do anything stupid, and I had no intention of doing it. But even that, I told the doctor, look, either you come at exactly 12 noon or don't bother coming at all, because this is the sort of time I fixed. And bless him, he came on time and then would share with me snippets of what was happening outside. Yeah, once I started getting books, then I had a fixed time for reading. Generally,
would you get any books you wanted? What was, how was that?
I mean, in all fairness to them, I got books. Then later I was able to get sort of DVDs and movies. So I watched a whole lot of stuff that I'd already seen before.
Okay.
Such as? No complaints that way.
Such as? What do you watch?
Well, I went through the entire 10 series of Friends, beginning to end. Yeah, I allowed myself, I think, 2 episodes a day until I finished all 10 seasons. There was a whole lot of other stuff. A lot of these box sets.
Yeah.
The whole of West Wing, because that's a show I can watch again and again. So the whole of West Wing came. There was a few other bits and bobs.
No Jailbreak or The Prisoner or anything like that?
No. I think that they would have been very sure not to send me.
Obviously, you're a very disciplined person because you managed to cope with this by creating a discipline, a routine for yourself.
I think, again, I probably conditioned by boarding school and perhaps a little bit about who I am. Once I set my mind and decide that this is what I'm going to do, then that's what it is. And
you stick to it?
9 times out of 10, I'll stick to that.
Okay. Just a curious question. Did they deny you shaving foam and a razor as well?
That's the beard.
Yeah, right.
Actually, the beard became a calendar for me. Because in the beginning, I was convinced that this detention would be about a week or 10 days.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I was actually sure, because this happened on the 5th of August. I thought 15th of August will pass and they'll let us go. And when on the 15th of August, they didn't let us out, I was like, okay, now I need to figure out, I mean, I need to know for myself how long this is going.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that is to stop shaving. And let's see how long my beard gets. Truth be told, I did not expect it to go as long as it did. If I had known, I wouldn't have done that, because it became really unruly, very sort of difficult to manage. I don't know how people eat with such bushy mustaches, because I spent at least 15 or 20 minutes after every meal trying to clean up. So it never came back
How
again.
long did it go, finally?
I think it was
till here, right?
about here.
Seen those pictures, like people rescued from an island after a shipwreck who've not been allowed.
You've seen that Tom Hanks movie where he talks, to the baseball.
Yeah,
I didn't have the baseball to talk to. I did make a snowman.
Oh, really?
I did make a snowman. He didn't last as long as
Did you give the snowman a name?
He didn't last long enough for me to christen him. But I shared my gloves with him. I put a hat on him. He had buttons. He had eyes. And we had a very short conversation. But then the sun came out and he disappeared.
Oh, well, that's life, I suppose. But, Omar, tell me, when did they come and talk to you politically? How long did that take before somebody came to see you, somebody of consequence?
Actually, there was no contact with the government.
None?
There was no political talk at all.
For how long?
Until I left.
Oh, really?
Nothing. The only contact I had with the government was a regular visit from the magistrate who was in charge of the sub-jail, because every building that you detain people in has to be designated a sub-jail. Okay. So the magistrate who was in charge of mine would make regular visits. Other than that, access to me was very tightly controlled, and therefore I was actually more suspicious of people who were being allowed to come and see me, because I couldn't understand what the motive was in allowing them. But otherwise, there was no contact with the government at all until on the last day when the officer came and said, "These are your orders, you're being released," and that was it.
Did you have any sense of what was happening outside? Even from people who came and saw you?
I was getting food from home, so from time to time, members of the staff would come. Twice or thrice a week, my sister was allowed. In between, my mom was there, so she would come. So yeah, I'd get alternate day updates about what was going on and all the rest of it.
Okay, so living alone, having a routine, having discipline is one part of it. But there must be another part of it where you must wonder what happens politically in the future, what happens to Kashmir, what happens to you?
Obviously, there was a lot of questions. There were questions about my own sort of, how committed am I to a political sort of career going ahead, what Jammu and Kashmir is going to look like after this, trying to come to terms with what had happened. See, because, I mean, I understand the politics of Article 370. I understand that it was part and parcel of sort of a whole series of election manifestos of the BJP. So, I mean, I understand where they were coming from. But then the commitments that were made with Jammu and Kashmir were not made by a political party. They were made by the Union of India with the state of Jammu and Kashmir.
Yeah.
and to sort of wish those away and to get rid of them in the way they were it still is difficult to reconcile oneself to. You don't wish away sovereign commitments like that.
Did you feel then at any stage that your political career was over, that you wouldn't be allowed, there wouldn't be more politics? Did you feel there wouldn't be an opportunity? And did you feel, look, why am I doing this?
Well, there was a lot of sort of self-introspection. There was a lot of questioning about what I would or wouldn't do.
Yeah.
I never had any sort of doubts about whether I would be allowed, because I'm not here at anybody's mercy.
Yeah.
I mean, the people of Jammu and Kashmir determine my political future. So I wasn't concerned as to what government of India might or might not let me do. It was more a question of what I would or wouldn't want to do, and what the sort of people of Jammu and Kashmir were thinking. Because while I had sort of access to news and information, I didn't really have access to party colleagues and workers and things like that. So it was a long time after I came out that I was able to sort of get a sense of the mood and what people were thinking and how we needed to reorient the sort of political direction that we were taking.
But what about the personal stuff? I mean, I think most people here know that you started out working, you didn't start out going into politics. You were hardly groomed as a successor by your father, that when you wanted to join politics, your father was not necessarily wild about the idea. So you had the option of walking away from it. Did that ever come across your mind?
Well, I'd be lying if I said it didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm only human.
Sure.
And I mean, when you spend that much time alone, there are all sorts of questions that go through one's mind. But I was clear that I'm not going to walk away and just leave a vacuum for sort of the forces that I've been trying to fight against to fill. And I have a commitment to Jammu and Kashmir. By extension of that, I have a commitment to the rest of the country. And I intend to see that through.
There must have been, I mean, I'm guessing now, for the last several decades now, your father, your lives have been at risk. Pakistani terrorists, separatists, people have targeted you. Militants have seen you as Indian stooges who are denying the people of Kashmir their right to join Pakistan or whatever by claiming to be loyal Indians. Did it seem ironic for you now to be in this position?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always knew that there would be a section of population in Jammu and Kashmir for whom my politics would never be acceptable. The people or that section that didn't see a future for Jammu and Kashmir with the rest of India. But I never thought that I would be on a side where a concerted effort by the government and its political party to demonize mainstream political leadership in Jammu and Kashmir is very difficult to understand. And but it is the new reality. It is what it is, and I'd be foolish to sort of expect anything better. It's how it is, and so be it.
But there is a huge mental shift, isn't there? I remember when you were minister in the External Affairs Ministry in the Vajpayee government, I had many friends then who worked in the Foreign Office, and they said they'd never met a minister who worked as hard as you. And I said this to you, and you said, really? I used to work much harder in the private sector, just shows you what government is like. And they said that if they wanted you to go to places like Africa, unglamorous places, you were always willing to get onto a plane to defend India, to represent India, to fight for India. And yet, here you were in detention.
Look, let's be clear, I didn't do anybody any favors. As I say in Hindi, मैंने एहसान समझ के नहीं किया. It was my work, it was my duty, it was my belief. I mean, taking on from your previous session, this is the country that I was born into.
Yeah.
This is the country that, I mean, I was also born with a British birth certificate.
Yep.
I could very easily, like Shashi, go and take a British passport and say goodbye. But by choice, I continue to stay here. And I would like to believe that this will be the soil into which I'll be buried at the end. And it's out of a sense of commitment, not out of a sense of obligation. So, I mean, politics is a dirty place. As my mom always says, if you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen. I mean, these sort of attacks and this sort of thing, it happens. It's not nice, but it is the reality of the political space, and you just have to get on with it.
Are you better at coping with it now?
I have a thicker skin than I started out with. But it's not as thick as some people would like to believe. I mean, look, we're all human. Yeah. There is a limit to sort of the criticism and the unfairness that sometimes surrounds you. But like I said, yeah, I mean, with every passing day, the skin just gets that much thicker.
Okay. Let's now talk about the current state of affairs in Kashmir. How would you, if I asked you in a para to characterize what's happening in Kashmir now, what would you say? In Jammu and Kashmir, let's be fair.
It's relatively calm.
Yeah.
It's no secret that you're not seeing the sort of street protests that otherwise you did see. Now, we can argue about the reasons behind that and how much of that comes from within sort of the people and how much of that is the heavy-handedness of the administration, and I don't want to get into that argument. I'll just accept that things are, at least on the face of it, calm. This belief that Article 370 was the root cause of all Jammu and Kashmir's problems, unfortunately, is not true.
Explain that, just expand on that.
I'll come to that. On the 5th of August 2019, when Article 370 was watered down and completely hollowed out, this country was told that separatism is a product of Article 370, terrorism is a product of Article 370, Jammu and Kashmir's seeming lack of development is a result of Article 370. Once Article 370 has gone, all these problems will be done away with. Here we are in 2014, we will be reaching the 5th anniversary of what happened in August of this year. Pockets of separatist support continue to exist. Terror on the ground, there is hardly a week or 2 weeks during which a terrorist attack in Jammu and Kashmir is not reported.
Yeah.
Areas that were hitherto free of terror, particularly the hills of Jammu, Rajouri, Poonch, are now seeing militant attacks. I don't think there was a single targeted attack against a member of the minority community by militants when I was Chief Minister for 6 years. Today, that is a regular occurrence, unfortunately, in the valley. Those Kashmiri Pandits that we had resettled in the valley with government jobs and all sorts of other sort of packages are now screaming to be allowed to leave Kashmir and move back to Jammu. There's this whole belief that Jammu and Kashmir has suddenly seen new development. Yeah. But when I ask the people who claim this, look, can you please point out a single new project that has come up in Jammu and Kashmir after Article 370 was watered down? There's not a single one they can point out. Now, I understand we have a railway line. But the fact is that the foundation stone for this railway line was laid when Indira Gandhi was Prime Minister. Now, looking around at this audience, there are a fair number of young people here. I would hazard that some of you weren't even born when Indira Gandhi was Prime Minister. That's how long ago the foundation stone was laid. So, I mean, this is not a product of just post-5th August 2019. No, this entire sort of hawa has been created about tourism numbers. Yeah. That suddenly, and I really want to get into this because this really gets under my skin. No, I'm happy to praise good work when I see it, but at the same time, I reserve the right to call out rubbish when it's being bandied about as fact. You know, you're being fed this diet that suddenly tourists in Kashmir, the number has gone up to 1 crore plus from, I think, 15 lakhs or 16 lakhs was the number. You know, when I first heard this number, I was amazed. I really felt that the rest of us were hugely incompetent, that we weren't able to build this kind of tourism into Jammu and Kashmir. But then I sat back and thought, well, hang on. If the number of tourists coming into Kashmir has gone up from 15 lakhs to 1 crore 15 lakhs, where are they staying? Because I don't see any new hotels that have been added. No new guest houses have been built. Hardly any new tourism infrastructure has come. So are they staying under the flyovers? Are they sleeping in their cars? Are they sleeping in the airport? Where are they going? And then when you look at the way this tourism number is counted, it all makes sense. As a policy, we did not count pilgrims as tourists.
Okay.
Because we found that people who came for pilgrimage very rarely went off the pilgrim track and became tourists. Particularly those who came for the darshan of Mata Vaishno Devi. Those who came for Mata Vaishno Devi's darshan, they would come to Jammu, arrive in Katra, go straight up to the cave, do their darshan, come back to Katra, go back to Jammu and leave. We could never get them to move even a kilometer left or right of the track to participate in any tourist activity. So we didn't count them as tourists. In the same vein, people who came for Shri Amarnath Ji Yatra, we wouldn't count them as tourists as well, because even though we knew a handful of them would go to Gulmarg and elsewhere, most of them would just come to Amarnath Ji, do darshan, and go back. But this government, as a sort of considered decision, thought that, okay, fine, let's count all of these as tourists. Now you get 1 crore plus Mata Vaishno Devi Yatris. You get 3 lakh plus Amarnath Yatris. And you have about 15 to 17 lakh tourists every year. That was the same number that was coming when I was chief minister. Add all this up, you immediately get the 1 crore 20 plus lakh that they say are tourists today. So where are the new tourists? They're not new tourists. They're just the same ones that are now, the categorization has been changed. Amarnath Yatris are also tourists, Mata Vaishno Devi Yatris are also tourists, and tourists are also tourists. And suddenly the whole country is told, देखो जी, 370 हटा, अब 15 लाख से 1 crore 20 lakh तक हमने tourism पहुंचाया. Please, look, if you're honest with me and tell us that, look, this is what we've done, I'll be the first person to stand up and say, excellent, well done, good job. But if you're going to feed this nation a bunch of lies, then I'm sorry, I'm going to pick each one up and point out to you that this is false.
We hear in the media, Kashmiris, well, let's say Shaila Rashid, for example, who were very critical of the government before, now coming out and saying how wonderful things are, how peace has returned to Kashmir, how people have reached out to, the government has reached out to ordinary people, and a new sort of paradise has been created. How does that make you feel?
The sad fact is that the government is not reaching out to the ordinary people of Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir has been denied its own elected government since 2018. We have not had an assembly election in Jammu and Kashmir since 2014. Now please explain to me, if everything in Jammu and Kashmir is really hunky-dory, if everything is great, it is peaceful, it is developed, it is happy, the people of Jammu and Kashmir are thrilled with what happened on the 5th of August 2019, why have we not had an assembly election? Everything that the BJP had to do to win an election, they've done. They've gerrymandered the constituencies, they've had delimitation, they've announced new sort of reservation for various categories. Everything they needed to do, seemingly to win an election, they've done. And in spite of that, you're not having assembly elections in Jammu and Kashmir. I mean, contrary to what you're saying, that this is the most connected government, I will tell you that this is the most disconnected government between the people and those who govern them. I mean, for all the talk of normalcy in Jammu and Kashmir, the fact of the matter is that our Lieutenant Governor does not leave Raj Bhavan until all the roads in Srinagar are cleared of traffic before his cars can go past. Now that's how sort of disconnected our rulers are from the people on the ground. So, I mean, it's all very well to make claims, but the fact is that the truth is very different.
Okay, let me give you 2 claims that are repeatedly made about Kashmir, about your family, in an effort to convince people that abrogation of 370 was required, that you guys had made a mess of Kashmir. The first is that you were unable to protect the Kashmiri Pandits, that thousands of Kashmiri Pandits left, and you guys were happy, and this kind of ethnic cleansing went on in your regime. Now, I know the facts, you know the facts, but I think they're worth stating.
Look, the absence of Kashmiri Pandits from Kashmir is the sort of biggest open wound of the last 30 plus years of trouble. No, it's actually unfortunate that the original way in which this panel had been, or this discussion had been planned, was to have had another sort of panelist with me to discuss reconciliation and the way forward. And one of the areas of reconciliation is to sort of be able to facilitate the return of Kashmiri Pandits to Jammu and Kashmir. Kashmiri Pandits did not leave because of 370.
Yeah.
Okay? Because if they had left because of 370, then after the 5th of August 2019, they would have come back. Kashmiri Pandits left because their sense of security was snatched away from them. They won't come back until that sense of security is returned to them. And this government has not returned Kashmiri Pandits their sense of security. The fact is that more Kashmiri Pandits want to leave Kashmir today than wanted to 5 or 10 years ago. More Kashmiri Pandits have been killed in targeted attacks under this government than under the previous government. But so long as Bollywood keeps churning out propaganda movies, these sort of facts are going to be very conveniently glossed over.
Oh, what about 89? I think your father had just resigned as chief minister when it began.
If you look at the, as they say, chronology samajhiye.
Yeah.
If you look at the chronology of it, Kashmiri Pandits started leaving Kashmir after January of 1990, by which time my father had already left office.
Yeah. Your father resigned what? Middle to end of 89?
Jagmohan was the governor.
Was the governor, yeah.
Jagmohan was the governor, Mufti Muhammad Sayyid was the Home Minister of India, and VP Singh was the Prime Minister when Kashmiri Pandits started leaving.
In a government supported by the left and the BJP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these are facts that are inconvenient.
Okay, so let me give you
but they are facts.
Okay, let me give you the other side, which is you were then elected, you became chief minister. What did you do to bring Kashmiri Pandits back? What did you do to make them feel they would be secure?
Well, clearly not enough.
Yeah.
Because if we'd done enough, they would have all come back. But we did make a start, particularly working with Dr. Manmohan Singh's government. We had a package of incentives that brought more than 5,000 Kashmiri Pandits, settled them in various parts of the valley in government jobs, and it was a fairly successful sort of program. But as I said, unless you restore the sense of security and give them the option to go back from where they came from, all of this is just sort of optics and just sort of a little bit on the top. I mean, the numbers that left are in the hundreds of thousands. I think it's about 2-3 lakh.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to make a much bigger effort to bring them back.
Okay. The other allegation is that the average Indian's taxes have gone for many years to subsidize Kashmir, to build things in Kashmir. All of this has not reached the people of Kashmir because corrupt politicians, in brackets, i.e. the Abdullahs, and people like that have stolen all the money. How do you respond to that?
Well, even now, Jammu and Kashmir has amongst the lowest levels of poverty in the country.
Yeah, is that true? Really?
Yeah, amongst the lowest levels. I don't remember the last time somebody starved to death in Jammu and Kashmir.
Okay.
Even after the worst floods in recent memory, you still didn't have any deaths on account of hunger and starvation. The basic human development indices of Jammu and Kashmir are far better than comparable states, and perhaps even in the range of some of the more developed states. I'm not going to now sort of treat you to numbers, but there are statistics to show that in some areas of the Human Development Index, we're even better than Gujarat and states like that. So, while we may not be the most developed state in Jammu and Kashmir, in India, we are definitely not sort of one of the Bimaru states, as others have been called. Make up your mind. Are the problems in Jammu and Kashmir because of two families, or are they because of Pakistan?
Why not both options?
Because Jammu and Kashmir has been a victim of militancy and terrorism. Militancy and terrorism is not the product of two families.
Yeah.
It's the product of Pakistan. Before militancy broke out in Jammu and Kashmir was one of the most advanced states and one of the most progressive states in terms of investment in this country. Take militancy out of the equation and I can guarantee you, regardless of who is in office, Jammu and Kashmir will again be one of the most developed and progressive states in the country. It is very convenient to sort of try and craft a narrative blaming one or two people. But the truth is that, and again, I would have been actually happier if there had been somebody from the right wing sitting next to me who could sort of...
Don't worry, they'll all respond tomorrow.
No,
so
I'm sure they will, and social media is a great space for this, but it's not the same as sort of an actual sort of back and forth.
Yeah.
Whatever development Jammu and Kashmir has seen up until now has been pre-5th August 2019. A small example. You currently have the Khelo India Winter Games that are going on in Gulmarg as we speak.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, all the infrastructure that is being used for those Khelo India Games was either developed when my father was Chief Minister or when I was Chief Minister. Not one piece of infrastructure for winter sports in Gulmarg has been added after January 2015 when I demitted office. Now, I will be the last person to claim that we did everything for Jammu and Kashmir. But I also think in the same vein, it is grossly unfair to suggest that we did absolutely nothing.
Okay. What about the fact that politics continues to be dominated by two families? Is that healthy?
Are we a democracy?
Well,
yes.
You answer the question.
Well,
yes, of course. If we
are a democracy, then ultimately the right to choose lies with the people.
Yeah.
Why do you grudge them their choice? They have a choice to reject one family, two family, or 10 families. I am not here because somebody has put me here.
Yeah.
I am here because the people of Jammu and Kashmir elected me to that place. I am out of office today because the people of Jammu and Kashmir did not return me to office. I may or may not re-enter the office of the Chief Minister. But that will be determined not by you or by Delhi or by anybody sitting in this room. It will be determined by the voters of Jammu and Kashmir. I am not apologetic about the fact that I belong to a political family. It is the choice of the voters whether to return me to office or not. That is the beauty of democracy. So this whole thing about being part of a family, look, the BJP only has a problem with those families that are opposed to it. Let's be honest. The BJP has no problem with families that are part of the BJP. And I'll give you a whole list of people who are part of the BJP who belong to political families, who are sitting in good ministries in the government of India today. Now, just because they're part of the BJP, their families don't matter. But when you're opposed to the BJP, then suddenly your family is a problem. The Akalis are not a problem for the BJP when they're allies of the BJP, but they're a problem when they're out. The PDP and the fact that they belong to the Mufti family are not a problem when they're allies. I was not a problem when I was part of Vajpayee Saab's government, and so on and so forth. So let's be honest. The problem the BJP has is not with families. The problem the BJP has is with those people who oppose the BJP. And if I'm going to be criticized for that, I have no problem with that.
All right. Let's look forward. What do you see happening in Kashmir? Well, let's start first of all with the parliamentary elections. That's the first thing. And then after that,
well,
what do you see happening?
We'll have a parliament election. We are a very small territory. We count for all of 5 seats in parliament. Ladakh, if you include, then 6. So we really don't do anything to craft the sort of national narrative. But we'll take the fight to the BJP as much as we can. We have 3 seats sort of predominantly in the valley, 2 seats Jammu side. I'm hopeful about 3. The 2 in the Jammu region, it's going to be a tough fight, but we'll take those up. The important question is, what is the BJP and what is the government of India going to do about the deadline that the Supreme Court has set? The Supreme Court of India, in its sort of pronouncement on 370 and the rest of it, has also instructed the government of India to complete assembly elections by the end of September of this year. Now, I think it's a matter of considerable shame that elections in Jammu and Kashmir, rather than being announced by the Election Commission or encouraged by Government of India, had to be announced by the Supreme Court. But so be it, we'll take it whichever way we can get it. I now hope that the Supreme Court's order will be followed and we'll have assembly elections before the end of the year.
But, I mean, it is possible it won't be followed and the government will go to the Supreme Court and say anti-national forces are at work and it's not safe, danger to public safety. It's possible.
I would love for the government of India to turn around and say that, because, and in the same vein, I will ask them, then what the hell was 5th August 2019 about? Because if 5 years after 5th August 2019, you still cannot hold an assembly election in Jammu and Kashmir, then shame on you. Because if you could have assembly elections in 96, when, believe me, things were a whole lot worse. Yeah. If you could have assembly elections in 1996, then you have absolutely no excuse for an inability to conduct assembly elections in 2024.
All right. Let's assume for the purposes of argument that elections are held in August or September. What will you campaign on?
Well, we will campaign on protecting the rights of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, protecting their land, protecting their character, and we will campaign on undoing a lot of the damage that was done to Jammu and Kashmir after 5th August 2019. We will also campaign on a positive agenda, on the agenda of peace, on the agenda of inclusivity, on the agenda of development, and on the agenda of, Shashi made that point very eloquently about the difference between tolerance and acceptance. Yeah. We will definitely be talking about acceptance.
Are you optimistic that the National Conference will do well?
Show me a political party that ever goes into an election in a pessimistic frame of mind.
I'll introduce you to many congressmen.
Even individuals who know they're going to leave their deposit behind in the elections. If ever asked, "Aap kaise karoge?" "Hum to jeet jayenge, aur hum bhari bahumat se jo hai election jeet jayenge." We will do well.
You will?
We will do well. Yeah, we'll do well. And I'm not going to add any ifs or buts, because those always get us into trouble.
Omar Abdullah, this has been wonderful. It's been an education listening to you. I think many of us didn't know what had actually happened to you, the personal and the political. You really are one of our most articulate politicians. More power to you. Ladies and gentlemen, Omar Abdullah.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Abdullah. You've taken on some tough questions and answered them quite fiercely and honestly. We appreciate that. Please remain on stage as I invite Rajiv Khandekar, editor, ABP Maja and ABP News, to present Mr. Abdullah with a memento from ABP Ideas of India. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause.